you be using generative questions to help yourself and others to connect and to move forward during these times. So Sherry, you want to maybe introduce them to these two practices?
Sure. We're just going to take like 1 or 2 minutes for those people who are not familiar with Conversations Worth Having, just to give you a really brief, here's what we're going to be doing over the next 28 minutes. So Conversations Worth Having is a book, and in the book are 2 really simple practices. And they're based on the notion that everything we do is conversation. Whether we're talking with ourselves or we're talking with other people, it's like the water in which fish swim. And if the water is toxic, the fish can't thrive. The same for us. If our conversations are toxic, we can't thrive. And we are actually kind of wired to look for problems, look for issues, and focus on those. But we're also wired to find connection and to look for possibilities and use our creativity. If we get stuck in the paying attention to what's wrong, our conversations can become toxic. And so we offer 2 simple practices to help shift from the negative, fear-based, problem-oriented conversations to ones that are enlivening, generative, and connective. And the first one is generative questions. And that is asking questions that change the way people think. So if you're focused on the problem and someone says, what is it that you would like? That changes your thinking and the imagery that you have from what you don't have to what you do want. And positive framing is the second practice. And a generative question can flip something to a positive frame, or you can do that positive framing before you even get started in a conversation. And either place that you begin, you end up with a conversation worth having that is generative, it's inquiry-based, and it's outcome-focused. So if you would, in the chat box, at the very top of the chat box is a link. And if you have Google Drive, if you have a Google account, you should be able to click on that link and bring up a Jamboard, which we will show you in a minute. The second thing we'd like you to do is contribute a challenge, a troubling situation, something you're stuck with and you seem to be recycling, or something you're struggling with, or people that you're working with seem to be focused on all the time, and you'd like to know, how do we change this? And then what we're going to do for the rest of the time together is work on those. So there are 2 ways for you to participate in this. The first one is through chat box. So what we're going to do is we're going to take those challenges that you're typing in the chat box, and we're going to put them in the Jamboard, which is going to be up on the screen for everyone to see. And if you can't access Jamboard, just type in your generative questions. What questions might you ask around this issue or problem to help change the thinking and shift towards possibility and connection? If you're, yes.
I don't see the link in the chat box that you want them to copy.
It's at the very top of the chat box. I put it in there in the beginning.
Ah.
It's at the very top.
I don't see it, but maybe others do. No.
All right, well, let me finish this and then I'll put it back in there again. If you're in Jamboard, you can actually click on a sticky note and type in your questions. So probably the easiest thing for us to do is to stop this and instead shift over to Jamboard. So let me bring that up again. And I will.
Well, Sherry's putting the link in there. Has anybody here ever used Jamboard before? So this will be an experimentation. I see a lot of heads going no, but this will be, this is probably just my third time using it, but it's really fun, especially if you're used to using sticky notes and Post-its.
Do you see the link there now? Okay, wonderful. So I'm going to share my screen again. And Jackie, if you want to find one of those situations and let's post it on Jamboard.
All right, I'm not as sharp yet. I'm trying to get to my Jamboard.
Or you can just shout it out to me and I will put it up there.
All right.
And that'll be a way to show people how to do this if they haven't done it before.
Sherry, just so you know, it's asking us to request access.
Oh.
You might need to have all our emails or something, so maybe.
And I still don't see a link to Jamboard, so.
Okay.
I'm on this call because I want to learn how to learn Jamboard. That's my challenge. I'm just telling everybody, what generative question can I ask you to help me?
All right. Well, this is the first time we have tried Jamboard on a Zoom. So we are learning with you. And so maybe if has anybody been able to get in? Or does everybody need
We need permission.
permission? Okay. So let's drop back, and instead of doing that, let's do this the way we did it last time.
Going back to now, Zoom becomes the old-fashioned way.
Yeah, and we will figure this out for next time and make sure that everybody can access Jamboard. Good information to know. All right, so let's go up to an issue.
So if you can type in the chat box an issue, a challenge, a problem, is something stressful that's going on right now for you.
Or for a family member, or for colleagues, clients. Organizational burnout, poor work group collaboration. So let's look at what might be the positive opposite. If you were going to frame a conversation with a group of team members or colleagues around organizational burnout and poor work group collaboration, which are kind of two different topics, but they might be part of the same basic issue. What is it that you want? How could you flip that and frame it for what you do want? And you can go ahead and type that into the chat box if you want, or just unmute yourself and say it. Let's make this conversational.
I want to feel energized and engaged.
Yeah, I want to feel energized and engaged at work. So people feeling energized and engaged. Let's start with that one. What's a generative question once you have that frame that would help you discover how to create more of that? Right, so if people are feeling burned out and uncollaborative, and what you'd like is energized and engaged in the workplace, what kind of a question might you ask members of the team that are feeling burned out that would help shift their thinking towards? Yes, Anna.
When was the last time you felt energized as a team? Give me some examples.
Great, beautiful generative question, right? Because it obviously was sometime that way in the past. And out of that can come so much information.
And Deborah posted, how can we increase positivity and energy in the team? So we've got looking at the best of the past, as Anna said, and then Deborah is helping to look forward. Who are we when we are at our best? And we're going to save this chat box for you so that you'll be able to go back and look at these questions.
Great.
Typing.
So when your team is most energized and engaged, what is different? Yeah, what are the conditions that help create that? These are great questions. All right, let's try another.
Here's a question that was
Great.
earlier was, you know, everybody keeps talking COVID, and it's getting kind of dreary. I think it was there Jamie? If you can click off if you could tell us, there was a question I saw earlier.
Yeah, it was the situation. So our leadership team, there's 6 of us, and 2 at the head are constantly focused on how bad this is and how bad it could be. And those of us that know some conversations worth having, some appreciative inquiry, are trying to always, you know, flip a bit, but it kind of stays stuck in the muck. It doesn't go very far. So we are all going to attend the Conversations Worth Having Bootcamp this summer, so that's a big win.
Oh, yay. It'll be exciting to have you. So if your team leaders just seem to want to stay focused on COVID or on the negative situation and the dreary nature of it, what kinds of questions might you ask to shift their conversation?
You know, Sherry, I got to thinking that a lot of times when we're focused on some of the negative that's going on, it's really indicative of us not taking good care of ourselves. So I might ask, what are the ways that you're taking care of yourself during this time to make sure that you're engaged in that self-care that's so important as we sit isolated from one another? So that's probably where I would begin.
Nice. And that begins with generating connection between people, kind of making the invisible visible for people. What other kind of generative questions might you ask?
Maybe what are the gifts that you've received because of this time? You know, things that wouldn't have happened otherwise.
Yeah. And you might even do it as a kind of a I wonder kind of a question, like, have there been any positive outcomes from this for you?
Mm-hmm.
So they don't feel like you're trying to flip them out, but asking a really authentic question, has nothing good come from this? You know? Yeah, nice. I wonder also with a situation like this, sometimes I think a kind of a step back and helping them become more self-aware about what this conversation is doing to them as a group of leaders. How is this conversation affecting their health, their resilience, their own generativity? And if they're confused, providing them with just a little bit of the neuroscience behind staying and cycling in the negative, and what that does to their immune system, to their creativity, etc. And then just asking, would they, you know, do they want to figure out some creative ways of moving forward? Might shift their thinking. Jackie, did you see another?
Yeah, I'm typing this in. Dr. Jen, I know you're out there, asked a really interesting situation. Starting a conversation when the belief is there are things you don't discuss: politics, religion, and vaccination. Dr. Jen, could you unmute yourself and tell us more? But this was an issue. So I'm scrolling through the chat while Sherry's here, but tell us more, Dr. Jen.
Well, one of the things that certainly with people that I have been talking to is this divisiveness that we're either conservative or liberal, are one religion or another. We either support vaccinations or we don't. Or with like COVID, people are either caught in the field or they want the state to open or they don't. And for the people who feel, so it just seems to be really strong held beliefs. And it goes back to this underlying belief, often generations old, that we just don't discuss these things. So I'm wondering what questions might be recommended to be able to start a conversation. There are people who want to see change. I would say that they want to see change, but yet that belief is really, really strong.
Great question. What are some suggested generative questions that you all might ask? Just feel free to unmute yourself if you want, or you can type them in the chat box.
That's a tough one, Jen. I was thinking that when you're in a team, is if you can help people realize, I always think a preface such as, I hear your perspective. Let's continue to hear from other perspectives, and all perspectives are welcome. That you really encourage that we all have different perspectives, and that's okay.
And sometimes you might even ask a question that says, we might all disagree on how to get someplace, but I wonder if we can all agree on the place we'd like to get to together. Where do you want to get to? And then begin to look at, usually there's more than one pathway towards something. So what are all the pathways that are possible? Routes. What do we know? What do we not know? What do we need to know?
Yes, and Phyllis typed, how do we help everyone find their voice?
Yeah.
And encouraging, we need to hear from all voices in the room.
What folks are talking a lot about is this issue of moral and psychological safety. How can I feel like it's okay to be me, and that I can make decisions that are influenced by what it means to be me? And I think that if we begin with a question of, what are the conditions that allow us to feel safe, and not just physically safe, but morally safe, psychologically safe? What are the conditions of that environment? And when I meet with a team and we kind of go through some heavy stuff, it can sound kind of silly, but setting some ground rules for the group and saying, okay, what agreement can we come to have some tough conversations right now so that we can all feel safe? And I'll throw it on a poster, a newsprint if I have to, or if it's available, so that we can set some conditions for having safety so people can be themselves.
Great. Phyllis, can you tell us who Mark Brackett is? Permission to Feel, Mark Brackett.
Hi, everybody. I didn't shower this morning. I'm just going to be real for a nanosecond. I'm in Central PA and had to be in a Zoom by like 7 this morning, my friends. So
I didn't either. That's okay, Phyllis.
So I so appreciate, I'll come dolled up another time. So that was the reason I had myself not, that you couldn't see me. But I like some of the stuff I'm hearing, and I think he's from I think it's the Harvard project that Dr. Brackett's out of. And I think part of when I hear you speak to the Protect to Connect, it really aligns with a lot of the research that Dr. Brackett's doing. And it's all around, we're all coming with a trauma brain now. Everyone has been traumatized. We have this event. And so we're kind of all stuck in the amygdala kind of place. And how do we get people to connect? That's that whole prefrontal lobe cortex. So he's suggesting, again, this idea of just give people permission to feel. So lately, when I've been working with my teams, I'm really speaking to how do we feed their capacity to grow. And so the place I'm starting from is just giving everyone permission to feel. So establishing clear norms. Michael, you are like spot on with that. It's made such a huge difference. Not that we didn't have norms before, but now we're connecting them to what are virtual norms now for us to be the safest we can be. And so one of the things that I've found to be so interesting in being intentional about relational rituals. So how we begin and end things in life is so important. So it's really shifted that intensity that everyone has around sort of connecting it. Like, you know, they kind of have to vent and kind of get all their ick out. So I think this kind of helps in a way that frames it in, we are going to honor how people are feeling. We're going to recognize that. We're going to, you know, kind of not dismiss it. But then again, how do we flip it, right? So if the most positive things happen by the end of this team meeting, our team time together today, what's going to be different? How can we sort of start to kind of have our end in mind as we're kind of continuing to feed our capacity to grow? So I like this work that Brackett's done. He's connecting it a lot to like Brene Brown's work with vulnerability.
Nice.
I mean, there's just so many amazing, you know, Jackie and Sherry, we're so blessed that you wrote this book. I just think the conversations are our work right now. So how do we continue to kind of set people up for success? So that's just some of the stuff I'm loving.
Great.
One of the questions that's been really helpful is that I've started asking some of the teams that I work with is, how can you see this as a place, as somewhere exactly where you want to be? I think a lot of people come to places and they're like, I don't want to be here. Maybe we shouldn't be here as a team. But what if this is the place you're supposed to be? So if this is the place you're supposed to be as a team right now, why is this important to be here? And I find that grounds people in reality in a way that lets them fully appreciate the moment before they move on to generating something different. Like, yeah, your team's falling apart and imploding. So why is this the place you want to be right now? And helping people value that, at least in my opinion, helps people be grounded enough to do the hard work. Because I think most people don't want to be where they are and don't think they should be where they are. And that's the hard part.
That's great. I love that.
There's really nice, thank you, Chris, chats going on the importance of, you have an agenda and you're virtual, but pause, breathe, and get curious. Take time to connect with your team and see how they're doing. They've been online for 8 weeks, and it's okay if you have to go deep to understand where they are before trying to help them move forward.
I want to add one other thing just to Dr. Jen, when you were talking about the certain conversations you don't have, and just hearing Phyllis and Chris talk about the feelings and what is it about being where we are right now. If those conversations do come up, to not dismiss them, but to say, so what's behind that? What's underneath that you have a lot of energy around no vaccinations or no this or, and somewhere down there, you can either find commonality about where we want to go or discover commonality around the fears we have based upon our beliefs. And there's another grounding place of commonality. And again, so finding the commonality and then asking Chris's question, so why are we in this place where we're all discovering that underneath all of this, we're afraid? I mean, that might be a whole different conversation.
All right, go ahead, Dr. Jen.
That's great. What Michael said as far as safety, that has been the place that I've been coming from. And one of the reasons for bringing it up here was, I know that's where I was coming from, but I wanted questions that might, just a different perspective to approach it if the idea of being safe was not a conversation that somebody wanted to start with. So I'm glad to have lots of other examples. Thank you.
I'm gonna, it's 12:26. We really want to honor the time. And so this means you just have to come back next week. I'm gonna put one more question in. I think we have time for one more question, Sherry.
Sure.
Before we wrap it up. And then for next week, we invite you back. We're gonna try to do this, as you see, this is a quick Kickstarter. But one of the questions was, my colleagues are facing challenges with using online learning. And I forgot who said that. If you want to say a little bit more, but how we can help you with your colleagues to not fear or be frustrated.
That was me.
Thank you.
And in the situation where I am, because of scarce resources. We don't have. I teach in a Christian university college in Ghana in West Africa, and we do not yet have our own online learning platform. And suddenly we've been overtaken by this lockdown, and people really haven't known what to do. And some of the folk, some of my colleagues, not knowing what to do, they think, oh, we will just wait until this passes. And this is extremely optimistic. Well, that's a better word. It's extremely unrealistic thinking. And so I've been struggling to find ways to use WhatsApp and other things that our students might readily have access to. And I've been trying to encourage my colleagues to do the same. And I've had some ill-judged arguments along the way. And there was even a meeting today that I excused myself from because I'm chronic asthmatic. But they all decided to meet face to face with masks and social distancing and so forth. But we don't have to do it this way. Anyway, so, but I've just seen some feedback from that meeting, and it might be that they're looking at online options after all, in which case I'm hoping that they'll be open for me to support them after I've been so brilliant in trying to encourage them. Anyway, I've gone on too long, so I will stop.
No. It's a great question to end today. If everybody can hang on for a couple more minutes, Brian. I typed something in the chat box if people would come forward with, look at these great questions online. Has anyone had some great experience with online learning? What was it? How did you connect? What made it great? Phyllis, think about a time you had a positive experience when you challenge having to learn something new and co-create. And Anna, please share.
Brian, just as an idea, and everybody, maybe taking your colleagues back to the personal level in the beginning, like when, think of a time when you had a nice interaction with your family or friends online, and if you think that some of that can be translated into our learning experience with our students, maybe pulling that string may help, or can bring up some good examples of positive online experience, not necessarily an application to learning, because really it's not that big of a difference.
Many of them would have avoided having online exchanges of any kind. So it's trying to see when they had a good conversation on WhatsApp. But again, our WhatsApp platform is very quiet. It may be putting it back to good phone conversation. Yeah, asking when they had a good phone conversation that enabled them to connect with somebody from a distance. I think that's the way to go, because many of them are weary of using online tools, I fear.
Tony?
Tony?
Oh, she can't hear? Can you guys hear? Can you hear us?
Yes.
What happened?
I can hear.
Okay. Well, there's some wonderful things, Brian, in the chat. And if nobody else has anything to add, Sherry, do you want to tell us how we'll get access to this chat?
Sure. We're going to download the chat and we will save the recording. We will send all of you links. As long as you've registered, then we have your email. We can send you out the links to everything. If you haven't done so, please feel free to download a conversation toolkit off of our website. The preface and introduction to the book are also free to download online. And as we've had mentioned, we have an online boot camp coming up in the middle of June, which we'd love to have you join us. And we have a bunch of YouTube videos also on education and on conversations worth having around healthcare. And just go to our Conversations Worth Having YouTube channel and feel free to email either one of us.
And we really want to thank the Center for Appreciative Inquiry, who has really been catalyst to just get this idea of these Monday Kickstarters and get this online for us. So a big thank you to both Melissa and Kathy for helping us here.
Yeah, and thank you to all our AI friends and our Conversations Worth Having trainers who are on the call as well. So thanks for your input on all of this. And we hope we see you again next week. Have a great week. Come back with a story next week of how you shifted a conversation.
Great questions. Thank you for joining us.
Bye-bye.
Bye, everybody.